Hello friends. Azim Info Directory are here.
Let's face it, iOS 16 does not have the best battery life, but thankfully there are some new settings that you can change and some crucial techniques that you can learn that will help you get the most out of your iPhone's battery. So here are 35 of my best battery saving tips for iOS 16. Number 1, avoid using the animated lock screens all the time. So I'm talking about the weather lock screen and the astronomy lock screen. So these are both interactive lock screens that use quite a bit of battery because they use your location. There's also a live animation going on the lock screen, and it could eat away at your battery life. So just do not use these all the time. They're okay to use for like a focus mode setting or just at night, but try to avoid using them all day long. And speaking of the lock screen, you also want to limit your lock screen widgets, especially when it comes to third-party widgets. Now, I've tested this extensively, and I think that pretty much all first-party widgets are fine. Even things like the weather are fine on the lock screen. They don't drain battery or anything like that, but third-party applications can definitely eat away at your battery life. Like for example, I have Flighty here, which is a great application, but the widget could eat away at battery life because it is tracking a flight. It's using location and pulling data from the internet. Same with Apollo. So certain applications could eat away at your battery life here on the lock screen. I'm not saying to completely avoid third-party widgets. I'm just saying you don't want to have 3 third-party widgets right there. Maybe limit it to just 1 on your lock screen at any given time. And this applies to home screen widgets as well. I would just try to avoid using multiple third-party widgets. Just try to stick to your basic first-party widgets if at all possible. Now the next one is very important, and you may not even link the two together, but make sure that you have plenty of storage available. So if you go to your settings and then go to General, iPhone Storage, take a look at your bar up here. You need to have at least 25 to 30% of storage free. Now that is not something that Apple says themselves, but I've noticed over time that if you have at least 25 to 30% of storage available, you're not gonna have that lag and it's not gonna use as much energy to perform basic tasks. So my rule of thumb is 25 to 30% minimum of storage available, which is why I always recommend not getting the base storage model if you use a lot of storage. You see that icon up in the top left corner of my screen? That is a focus mode icon, and that is because the next tip is to utilize focus modes to disable notifications and just overall reduce your usage of time on the phone when working, when sleeping, when working out, or whatever you set up a focus mode for. So if you go into your settings and then to focus, you will see your focus modes right here, or you could add a custom focus mode by tapping the plus in the top right hand corner and going to custom. And from here, you're able to name your focus. And of course, I'm going to go into the one I have currently right here, but you can see that only 2 people are able to contact me. I'm only able to get the notifications from 2 specific people when it comes to phone calls or text messages. Now, also you can see for applications, I do not allow any third-party applications to notify me because I am working. I don't want to be distracted and tap on my phone to see if I have a new notification. So that is nice to have. You could also customize your home screen and your lock screen to basically have just like maybe one thing on the home screen, which is what I do sometimes. If you go to choose right here, you could see that you could choose only to have one certain screen on your home screen. So I do that, tap on done. Now if I go back to my home screen, I only have that one screen right there. So that could lead to less usage as well, which of course leads to less battery life. Just utilize this, especially for things like working out. If you're working, if you're doing gaming, if you're driving, set those up for those specific scenarios, and you're going to thank yourself because you're going to use your phone less, which is going to lead to less battery usage. Now, the next tip is to utilize the notification summary. So I feel like this is one of the most overlooked features in iOS right now. So if you go to your settings and go to notifications and then go to scheduled summary, you want to make sure this is turned on and select the applications that you want to be included in your app summary. Now, the reason this is very convenient and very good on battery life is because if you don't have critical alerts, if you don't need to get notifications for certain applications throughout the day, but you still want to see notifications for them at some time, you can do this. So you can see I have certain applications selected here that I only get notifications for at 8 a.m. and also at 11:15 p.m. So first thing in the morning and last thing at night, I get a summary of those notifications, not just every single time a notification comes through throughout the day. So this, of course, can also lead to improved battery because your phone is not lighting up, you're not getting multiple notifications throughout the day, but you're not fully disabling those notifications. And that segues perfectly into the next tip, which is to turn off notifications for applications you do not need notifications for. So this is one of the biggest battery drain culprits. I've been talking about this for several years here on the channel, but you want to fully disable notifications for things, especially like games, or just any application you don't use all the time. Like F1 Mobile right here, I'm not gonna need notifications from a game. So I could turn those off by just simply tapping right there. But if you did want certain notifications, of course you can add to scheduled summary, which we just talked about right there. But if you wanted to just disable certain types of notifications, you could do that here as well. Like the banners and the lock screen, you definitely want to turn those off if anything, because those will light up your phone and you will see the notification for that. You'll also want to disable sounds for most notifications as well, besides maybe like, your phone and messages and things like that. But if you just wanted to have no notification at all and maybe just a badge, you could do that. And that's not going to drain battery by just having a badge on your home screen. It's really the pop-ups and the things that light up your phone and make sounds that cause battery drain. So just keep that in mind. You want to definitely disable notifications for applications that you just simply do not need notifications from. Now, the next tip is going to disappoint a lot of people because I know it is a very beloved feature, but if you go to your settings, sounds and haptics, and then down to keyboard feedback, and if you have haptic turned on right here, you might want to consider turning that off. Apple has come out and said that the haptic keyboard feedback will impact your battery life. Now, they didn't say battery drain, but it will impact your battery life. So this feature, of course, is when you type, you will feel the haptic feedback every time you type and you touch a key. That is a really cool feature. A lot of people have been waiting on that for a while, but it does cause battery issues. Now, I'm not saying to turn this off, but if you do want to fully optimize your device for the best battery life possible, it is something that you might want to consider disabling. The next tip is to turn on the battery percentage in the status bar. So you can see I have my battery percentage right there in the status bar. And if I go into my settings here and then go to battery, you can see right up top, we have the option for battery percentage. So you want to make sure that is turned on. That way you can always see your battery level without needing to go into your control center to see it if you're on a notched device. And speaking of that battery level, you also want to avoid going below 20% battery. So you want to never let your phone completely die. Avoid letting your phone completely die like the plague. Please never let that happen. Now, Apple does recommend that you stay between 50 and 80% for maximum efficiency and long-term battery health, but if it goes below 50% or above 80%, that's fine. Just please try to avoid going below 20%, and especially do not let your phone ever completely die. And while we're in this section, I also want to go to the battery health and charging section right here, and there are two features in here that you might want to consider turning on or off. So first off is optimized battery charging. So this, of course, will reduce your battery aging by only charging up to 80% and then trickle charging after that when it detects that you're going to wake up or that you're going to unplug your phone. Now keep in mind, this feature does require another battery draining feature to be turned on, and that is the significant locations feature. So just keep that in mind with optimized battery charging. Now I will say I've had a pretty good experience with this over the years, and I think it does help. So that is something you want to consider keeping on. Now the new one down here in iOS 16.1 is clean energy charging. So it says that the iPhone will try to reduce your carbon footprint by selectively charging when lower carbon emission electricity is available. And just like with the optimized battery charging, it's going to learn your routine and reach a full charge before you need to use it. Now I've been using this for a while and I've not really noticed a significant improvement when I use that. Of course, it's not going to improve your battery life. It's just going to help, the environment by reducing your carbon footprint, but that is something you might want to turn off because it might not allow your phone to charge up as quickly as you might want. If you're an avid Safari browser like I am, you might want to consider getting ad block. So I cannot tell you how much battery drain these advertisements on websites cost. They've really gotten so much worse over the years, where they're full page takeovers, just an ad every 2 seconds. You don't need that. just use ad block. So they are free. If you go into your settings right here and then go down to Safari and then go down to extensions, you will see I have my ad block right here. But if you go down here and tap on more extensions, this will open up a page in the App Store where you can see content blockers right here. So just go to content blockers, pick out your favorite one right there, and it's going to help reduce those ads and different tracking, pixels and different things put into these websites that you don't need and that will impact your battery life. And speaking of Safari, this is something I just recently consulted with another person on and realized it was a big cause of their battery drain, and that is having too many applications open in Safari will definitely cause battery drain. And the reason for that is because your Safari is going to load very slow. First of all, that alone causes, your phone to use more power to just pull up Safari to begin with, let alone loading up all those different tabs. Like if you have 50 tabs open, 100 tabs open, that's going to cause issues. So you want to close out of your tabs after you're done using them. If you know you're done with that website, just X out of it or swipe over. It's very, very simple. Or if you're not good at that, you can go into your settings right here and go into Safari and then down to close tabs and set this to maybe 1 week or 1 month. That way they will close out automatically for you. My rule of thumb is to not have more than 10 tabs opened at any given time. So just keep that in mind. Next up, we have to talk about that always on display for the iPhone 14 Pro series. So this is something that I don't know. I'm very conflicted on this because I know it does cause battery usage. I'm not going to say battery drain because I don't think it causes battery drain, but I do know that the always on display does use some of my battery life. So if you don't want to have that on, if you're on the 14 Pro series, you can disable that. So if you go to your settings and then go to display and brightness and then go all the way down to the bottom, you will see always on. So you can turn that off. And now when we lock the screen, of course, we do not have that always on display. So I personally like the feature, so I'm willing to sacrifice a few percent of battery life per day, but just know that you can turn that off if you don't want it on. Now, Spotlight Search is easily one of my favorite features on iOS. I love being able to swipe down and getting to one of my Siri suggested applications or just typing in, something I want to search for and finding it in certain applications. However, this could and will cause battery usage. I'm trying to avoid the word battery drain because I don't think it's going to drain your battery life, but it will definitely eat away at your battery life. Even just having these Siri suggestions here or things below that could cause some battery issues, but the main issue arises when you search something and it searches everywhere on your phone when you may not want it to search every single application and location. So if you go into your settings, go to Siri and search, and then down here, you will see quite a few options for the Spotlight Search. So you can see we have before searching, so you could turn off suggestions and recents. So recents is just basically the search right here, the search history. So you can see right there we have cats. If I turn this off, if I turn show recents off and go back down here, you will see that that went away. So it's not going to keep track of your history. So you could turn that on or off right there. Now also content from Apple. So you can have this show and look up or show in Spotlight. We also have suggestions from Apple. So this applies to app library, sharing, listening, and notifications. It does not apply to the Spotlight Search. But the thing that does apply to Spotlight Search is if you go down to the list of applications here and go in to, let's just say Amazon, for example, you could see that there are multiple settings in here you might want to change. So first off, learn from this application. This is something that you probably want to turn off for most applications. You don't need your device to learn from that application. And then right here, while searching, so if you don't want an application to show up in your Spotlight search, you want to turn this off. I cannot tell you how much battery life this has saved me over time by turning off certain applications for the Spotlight search. So even things, you can even turn off things like your photos in here as well. So if I go down to photos right here, you could turn this off for when searching. So now if I search for cat, you can see it's not going to search for my photos. It shows my notes right there, but it does not show my photos, which could also save quite a bit of battery life. Now, of course, that's probably a good feature for a lot of people. But again, if you want to optimize for the best battery life possible, that is something you might want to consider turning off. The next tip is to turn auto brightness on. So this is a feature that I've really just recently come around to over the past couple of years. I was very against auto brightness in the past, just because I always liked to make my own brightness. But I've learned that auto brightness is actually much better for your battery life. So if you go into your settings and then go to accessibility, and then to display and text size, and then all the way down to the bottom you can see auto brightness right there. You want to make sure this is turned on. The next tip is actually the toggle right above that, and that is reduce white point. You want to turn this on when you're in a very dark scenario, or even just if you like having a reduction of bright color intensity. That is what this does. It reduces the intensity of bright colors. If you turn that on, this will allow you to go basically below 0% brightness on your iPhone. This used to be kind of a trick, but now it's something I actually use on a semi-regular basis. So especially at night when I'm in bed, the iPhone 14 Pro is so bright that I need to turn reduce white point on and turn that up to like 50-60% just so I can not squint my eyes. And that of course in turn does also reduce battery usage because I'm not having a higher brightness on my phone. Now the next tip is as old as my grandmother, but that is to avoid heat. This is the biggest enemy of lithium ion batteries, which is the battery in your iPhone. And I'm not talking about just outside temperatures. Of course, you do want to, reduce your exposure to really hot sunny days with your iPhone just baking in the sun or on the beach. You don't want to have your phone just sitting on the beach right there because it's going to cause your phone to get hot and your battery is going to go from 50 to 0% in like 20 minutes. So you don't want that to happen. But again, I'm not talking about just outside, also inside. If your phone is getting hot, if you're playing games or something like that, let it sit for a minute, let it cool down. Don't keep using your phone when it's very hot. Heat, again, is the biggest enemy of lithium ion batteries. And something else I want to mention is that wireless charging could also be killing your battery capacity if you use that on a daily basis. I would just try to stick to normal charging and not wireless charging all the time. Oh, and another little trick I found is that if you're in the car and it's like a really hot day and your phone is really hot, just stick your phone up to the AC vent. Like put the AC right on the back of your iPhone without a case, and you will be surprised at how quick it cools down your iPhone. The next tip is another one I've been preaching about here on the channel for a very long time, and that is mail fetching. You want to make sure this is turned off. So if you go to your settings and then go to mail and then to accounts and then fetch new data, you want to make sure down here that this is turned on manually. You do not want this to be on automatically or any of the other ones. You want this to be set to manually. And then also up top right here, you want push to be turned off. Both of those should be turned off. That way your email only updates every time you go into the mail application and it will refresh automatically, but you won't get notifications, on your lock screen or just random notifications throughout the day for emails from Bells or emails from Target that you don't need, and that's going to take up your battery life. Now, of course, the only downside to this is that if you get an important email, you may not know instantly, but if you need an important email, you're probably not using your phone as your primary resource for checking your email. But you can go into a specific mailbox here as well and turn on push for specific folders. Like if I wanted to be on for specific folders, I could turn that on right there as well. The next tip is to use Wi-Fi when possible. So Wi-Fi uses much less battery life than cellular. This has been proven time and time again, which is why I also recommend doing FaceTime calls instead of actual phone calls when you can. If you and the other person are both at home, not only is your clarity going to be better, you're going to be able to hear each other better, much better over FaceTime than a phone call, but it's also going to save you both some battery life because you're using Wi-Fi only. But I'm not just talking about phone calls. I'm talking about everything like YouTube video watching, browsing through on Safari, sending text messages, anything like that. Just use Wi-Fi when it is possible. The next tip has to do with weather alerts. So if you go to the three lines down here in the bottom right and then go to the three dots in the top right and then to notifications, you will see that we have two sets of notifications here. So for severe weather and for next hour precipitation. So these both require your location to be on always. So not just while using the app or while in the app, you have to have your location set to always allow. So that is one thing that could lead to, of course, enhanced battery usage because the application is always using your location in the background. So that alone may be a reason to not have this turned on, but you especially do not want to have this turned on if you're in an area where you don't really have severe weather very often. You may as well just turn this off completely because if you don't have that very often, next hour precipitation is nice, but also you don't need that if you don't have or if you don't live in an area where you have constant precipitation or severe weather. So just keep that in mind. And then speaking of location services, you also want to make sure you limit the amount of applications that use your location on an always basis. So you can see I only have the weather application using my location always. Most of mine are set to while using, and that's what you want to have your application set to as well. So if you don't have it set to never, you want it to be while using most of the time. Now there are exceptions like the weather application, like Tesla, like different applications that may need to use your location in the background, but for 99%, they need to be on while using instead of always. And then if we go into system services right here, this is something else where you might want to consider turning off a few of these toggles. Now, most of these are actually pretty useful and you want to keep most of them turned on, especially things like, sharing your location. If you share that with other people, networking and wireless, your location-based alerts, things for Find My iPhone, emergency calls, most of these should be kept on. But if you don't want things like location-based suggestions, you could turn that off. Just certain things in here you might want to go ahead and look at disabling, but most of them should stay on. Really what you want to turn off down here are the analytics like iPhone analytics and routing and traffic for product improvement. You might want to turn those off because there's really no good reason for that for most users. And then also significant locations. So this is something, like I mentioned earlier, you might want to have this turned on if you use optimized battery charging. But if you don't use that feature, definitely turn this off. This uses your location in the background and tracks pretty much everywhere you go every day. So that does eat away at battery life if you have this turned on. And then also if you go back into the privacy and security section in your settings and go to analytics and improvements, you might want to turn off these as well. So all of these are just basically ways that Apple can improve the software, but they're going to get this data from people who just don't know that these are here. So you want to turn these off. That way you're not having things running in the background, including the main Share iPhone Analytics toggle up top. And then iOS 16 also introduced the safety check feature, which is going to allow you to see which people, which applications, and which devices have access to your location, your contacts, and all of that. So if you want to see it all in one, area, you can go to the safety check right here and go to manage sharing and access. So you can see that this feature is going to walk you through, what people have access to your location and photos, the applications that have access to your information like your calendar or contacts, and also review your account security, including your Apple ID password. So this is also something you might want to go through to potentially disable certain features and locations from applications or people, which that of course will always reduce your battery usage. Now the next one is one of the oldest but one of the best tricks in the book, and that is to disable background app refresh for some, or if not most, devices. So if you go to your settings, general background app refresh, you want to be very selective of the applications that you have updating in the background, like Acorns, I don't need that. Adblock, I don't need that. You can see certain applications do need to be turned on. Like for example, I like to have Chick-fil-A, the Apple Store. Let's see, I like to have Maps, of course, updating in the background. I need that to be updating in the background. But for most applications, you could probably turn this off. And speaking of age-old tips, the next one is another classic, and that is to disable vibration. So if you go to your settings and go to accessibility and then to touch, you have a vibration toggle right here, and you might want to consider turning that off, especially if you have an Apple Watch. There's really no reason to have vibration on your phone when you have a vibrating watch on your wrist that's going to notify you of text messages or phone calls. So I would strongly recommend turning this off. This does cause a good amount of battery usage, especially if it's going off several times throughout the day for phone calls, notifications, everything. If you're gonna have this on, make it only be for like the haptic keyboard or something like that. Don't have it for every single notification that you get. Now, one of the very first things I turn off every single time I get a new iPhone is inside of the display and brightness settings right here, and then down to raise to wake. So this feature not only is very annoying because of all the false triggers, but those false triggers also lead to battery usage. So I would recommend turning off raise to wake. Basically all this does, if you're not aware, is if your phone's sitting down like this and you raise it up like so, it's going to basically just unlock your phone or show your lock screen for you without you having to tap on it if you have a device without an always on display. So raise to wake, definitely recommend turning that off for most people. And then right above that, we have auto lock. Now I recommend not having this turned on to never, and also not set to 30 seconds. On my main device, I have this set to 4 minutes, and I say anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes is ideal for auto lock, because never, sometimes you might fall asleep with your phone turned on and you're gonna wake up with really low battery. 30 seconds, it's gonna dim every 30 seconds, and that's gonna get really annoying, and you're gonna have to keep tapping your phone and that's going to cause battery usage as well. So try to keep auto lock from 3 to 5 minutes. Oh, and also consider turning on automatic light and dark mode. So you can have this set to, a custom schedule or just sunset to sunrise, which is what I use on my main device. Now, this is only if you are not somebody who uses dark mode all the time. So dark mode, of course, will enhance your battery life because it's going to have, your device is going to use less pixels if you're on an OLED device. So you might want to consider turning this on if you are not somebody who uses dark mode on a 24/7 basis. I had to grab my main phone for this next tip, and that is to go into cellular right here and then go all the way down to the very bottom until you see Wi-Fi assist. You want to make sure this is turned off so you can see that it's actually worked at some point for me. So I had it on at some point, but I did eventually turn that off. And you can see it says automatically use cell data when Wi-Fi connectivity is poor. So I would recommend turning that off. Of course, it is going to use cellular data and it's going to be trying to compete, which one's faster. It's going to drain your battery life. And then also in here in cellular, you want to make sure that both iCloud Drive and iCloud Backup are disabled. I cannot tell you something that's going to drain your battery life more than having an iCloud Backup running while on cellular and not plugged into power. That's going to really eat away at your battery life. So make sure both of those are turned off as well. Now, the next tip might be obvious, but you want to keep an eye on your battery graph to get insight as to what is eating your battery life. So you can see last night was one of the rare times that I forgot to charge my phone overnight. But if you go on to one of these lines right here, you will be able to see what application or, if your lock screen, you can see right here, astronomy wallpaper took up 3% on my battery life from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. So like I mentioned earlier, you want to reduce your exposure to those, animated wallpapers like astronomy and weather. But you can see at any given time here in the graph, you can tap on that and see what was using up your battery life. Like Find My was using it right there. You can see right here was Instagram, messages, podcast, Twitter. Just go ahead right here and look for any big spikes. So if you see any big spikes down, you might want to consider looking into that and seeing if there's maybe a update required for the application, or just know to not use that application very often if it causes big battery drain. Now, the next tip is another one that I cannot believe I still see so many people doing on a daily basis, and that is this right here. Closing out of applications. Why? You do not need to be closing out of applications forcefully like that. Do not force close any of your applications. Let your device work as it's intended. Apple has mastered the art of applications being suspended in the background and not eating away at battery life. It's going to cause you more battery drain to launch that application after you just killed it than it's going to be just sitting in the background. So please, don't kill applications, let them run in the background. Does not matter how many applications you have opened up. Now, the final two tips have to do with software. So number one, you want to avoid using beta software on your main device. I've talked about this in my beta videos, but if you don't watch those, just know to avoid beta software on your main device. I don't care if it's iOS 16.100. It doesn't matter how far into the process we are. Please avoid beta software on your main device. Leave that to a test device. Get another device for testing if you want to do that. And then the final tip is to go into your settings, general, software updates, automatic updates, and make sure that this final toggle down here is enabled. And that is for security responses and system files. So this is going to automatically install rapid security updates on your device. It's not going to be a full iOS update. It's going to be something that just happens on your phone automatically to keep you as secure as possible, which of course could also enhance your battery life. So there you have it. Those are over 35 of my favorite battery saving tips here in iOS 16. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up. Also leave a comment down below with your favorite battery saving tip for your device specifically. And also if you enjoy these videos, make sure to subscribe. I have a lot more iOS 16 coverage coming very soon. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching and I'll see you soon.